Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I am the Director of Content and Community here at Paloma Health. Paloma Health, we are an online medical practices that focuses and treats hypothyroidism, which I'm just super passionate about and so excited to help continue to support this community with events like our speaker series today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick off to the one and only Mary Showman.
Thanks, Alex. We are really excited tonight because this is going to be a really interesting and unique conversation. And it's something you're not going to hear in too many other places. Tonight, we are going to be focusing on the intersection between Eastern, holistic, natural, functional, integrative medicine. You know, all of those terms sort of encompass some of the same kinds of approaches, and conventional treatment and diagnosis and treatment of Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And joining us today, we have two of the very best experts we could possibly have to talk about this. And they are both doctors, so they understand the traditional conventional medical world, but they both have very unique perspectives that they bring to their medical practice. More holistic, functional medicine approaches, energy medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, herbal approaches. So they are the best of all worlds. They understand the conventional. They also understand the benefits and power of all of the various alternatives and Eastern medicine approaches. And they can help guide us to the very best approaches that combine the best of all worlds. So we have Dr. Terry Pena with us, and we have Dr. Dr. Dennis Chernin with us. And I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Pena and give you a little bit of her background. And then she's going to tell us a little bit about some of her interest in thyroid and functional medicine. And then we'll move on to introducing Dr. Chernin. So Dr. Teresa Pena has so many initials after her name, I can't even tell you, MD, MBA, IFMPC. But the bottom line is she's a board certified family medicine physician for Paloma Health. So Dr. Pena has more than 25 years of clinical experience. She graduated medical school from the University of California, Davis, and did her residency at University of California, San Francisco at Fresno. And she wasn't content with having enough degrees, so she went out and got a professional development MBA in medical administration from University of St. Thomas, Minnesota. And she's also completed a master's level health coaching certificate from the University of Minnesota Center for Spirituality and Healing. She is one of the handful of physicians in Minnesota who has actually been certified by the Institute of Functional Medicine, which is the premier educational and certifying body for functional medicine. So Dr. Pena has a number of qualifications, as you can see, to talk to us about the intersection between functional and traditional medicine and our thyroid. So welcome, Dr. Pena.
Thank you. Thank you for, this is going to be awesome, guys. Get your questions ready.
Okay. And our other guest is Dr. Dennis Chernin. He is an MD and board certified in preventive medicine at Paloma Health. Dr. Chernin received his Bachelor of Arts from Northwestern University and his Doctor of Medicine and Master of Public Health from the University of Michigan. He did residencies in both psychiatry and preventive medicine and is board certified in preventive medicine. So he's got a lot of credentials too. As a healthcare provider, Dr. Chernin really focuses on holistic medical care. And he does a lot of work with patients who live with thyroid issues like hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis. He never completely left behind the conventional perspective, obviously, but he really has brought in holistic and family medicine approaches using yoga, nutrition, breathing, one of my favorites, meditation, homeopathy, and allopathic medicine when necessary. So again, one of these practitioners who looks at the best of all worlds and understands all the different options. He really feels that problems with the thyroid gland are very amenable to these types of therapies and treatment plans. And he'll be sharing with us today some of his thoughts on things that we can be doing in that vein to help support our thyroid. When he is not busy treating thyroid patients, he's also teaching and studying martial arts, Chinese martial arts specifically. He leads a kirtan yoga chanting group and paints abstract landscapes and portraits with acrylics. He's also the author of several books about meditation, yoga, holistic medicine, chakras, and breath work. So we're so lucky because he's a busy guy, apparently. And we're thrilled to have him with us today. So Dr. Chernin, I'd like to welcome you as well.
Thank you. It's a great introduction, Mary. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Dr. Pena. And I want to also, I'd like to also thank Marina and G and Mandy, who's been taking care of me the whole time since I joined Paloma, and all the other people in the staff, supported staff. And so this is a great opportunity. I do want to say a little bit, one thing about myself that I want to add to what Mary said, which was very gracious, is that I lived in an ashram for 5 years, a yoga ashram in the Chicago area. So much of what I share with you comes from that experience when I lived and studied meditation and homeopathy with a lot of other interesting people back and, always back. And so energy is involved with the chakras and is involved with the thyroid, and they really come together as a great intersection. So looking forward to this.
Great. Thank you so much. We're so excited to have both of you here. And just before we get started with our first question, I just wanted to establish, while we put the title of this event focused on Eastern medicine, we really do want to emphasize that we're talking about sort of East versus West, or East meets West more accurately. And Eastern medicine encompasses so many different modalities. It encompasses traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, herbalism, Ayurvedic medicine. It involves components like meditation, breathwork. There's so many different aspects. And so really, when we're talking about it, we do need to think about it in the concept of functional medicine, integrative medicine. Again, finding the best of holistic and natural and other types of modality approaches and combining them in the best way possible to mix with our conventional allopathic medical models. So that's why we're so excited to have two practitioners that have the same sort of a commitment to patient wellness and come at it from some different perspectives, but open-minded perspectives. So our first question that we'd like to start out with, and we have, what I'd like to do is also let you know, we have some questions that we put together here at Paloma, but we encourage you to share your questions, and you can ask them in the chat box or in the comments on your under your broadcast where there's a comment area. So please plug in those questions at any point along the way. And when we get through our list of specific questions that we wanted to cover, we will be looking at answering your questions and having the two doctors focus in on your specific issues. So feel free to ask questions at any point along the way by putting them in the comments or chat area. So our first question, I'd like to ask Teresa to start with, or Terry, Dr. Pena. Can you basically explain a little bit about the role of inflammation and how it connects to conditions like Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism? Because we know that there are a variety of different holistic and integrative and functional medicine practices that really can kind of focus in on the inflammatory process. So can you give us a little bit of overview on that?
Absolutely. So Hashimoto's, by definition, means there has been an inflammatory response of the immune system against the thyroid. So when one speaks of Hashimoto's, it implies that the immune system has been turned on in a wrong way. And so that inflammation, we're theorizing, is actually coming from the gut. It originates from that gut. And so inflammation from the gut or almost any other sources will affect the performance of the thyroid. So one of the things I'm always looking for in anybody for their health, but specifically for low functioning thyroid, is where are those sources of inflammation? I want to find them and I want to resolve them. So there is definitely a connection between all of that. And so, yeah, did I answer your question?
I think you did. I think you did. Dr. Chernin, I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about the relationship between holistic and integrative approaches, and Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism as well, and the inflammatory process.
Well, I think Dr. Pena nailed it exactly, what the connection. I think the thing that we'll be talking about as we go along, I'm sure, is what can you do about it?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of supplements can you take? What kind of foods can you eat? What kind of medications can you use? What kind of alternatives, such as homeopathy or yoga therapies, working with the chakras, how those can help inflammation, and would help quiet down the Hashimoto's problem that exists in the thyroid gland.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to stay with you, Dennis, and we're going to get into a topic that's really fascinating, and we've actually had a lot of demand from our Paloma readers and audience and Paloma patients for some information about this, because we see a lot about this online and different people talk about it, but the idea of the chakras and what they mean. So could you possibly explain for us the 7 chakras, and specifically the chakra that might be of most interest to the thyroid patients, the throat chakra, and how all of it works in terms of its impact on our health, and ultimately what we can do to have a positive impact on our chakras?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a big topic. I'll try to summarize it as quickly as I can and as carefully as I can. So I think we have to understand that chakras exist within the energy body. Yoga philosophy teaches us that we exist not just in the physical body and the mental body and our thinking. We exist in 5 different bodies, and that is the physical body. That's something called the energy body. Then there's the mental body. Then there's the subconscious body. And then there's a superconscious body, and within that is called the center of consciousness. So understanding that idea, we focus on the chakras on the energy body. They don't exist in the physical realm. So when you're in deep meditation, you can visualize it sometimes, and you can feel it as an energy field. So that's really important. Chakra means it means wheel. It also means circle. It's a Sanskrit term. And it's where the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual come together. So there are 7 chakras, and Alex, if you could put that little picture up, I think that'd be helpful. Something that came from one of my books, and I can sort of show you the 7 chakras. There they are. Thank you very much. So you can see they're sort of lined up. The one on the right, where it says the chakras and the nadis, you can sort of see where the chakras are in the energy body, not in the physical body, but there's correlations with the physical body. The chart on the right will show you the various glands and nerve plexuses that are associated with these energy bodies called the chakras. So for today's conversation, as Mary had suggested, we will focus a lot on the 5th chakra. And why? As you can see by the picture, that the 5th chakra is associated with in the area of the thyroid gland, also the pharyngeal plexus. So that's kind of the area that we're going to be focusing on. We could talk about each one of these chakras, and maybe someday we can do another series on that, but today we'll focus on the 5th chakra. And basically the thyroid gland, as we know, is responsible for energy production and metabolism. If we have a problem with the thyroid gland, especially hypothyroidism, we lose energy, we lose libido, we lose the ability to sort of concentrate, we get kind of depressed and sad. And so the 5th chakra also has some of these qualities to it. So in the yogic tradition, each chakra is associated with a different element. First chakra is the earth, the second is water, the third is fire, the 4th is air, and the 5th chakra, which we're talking about, is space, or we also call it, in the old days, they would call it ether. It also, in the yogic tradition, it accompanies the quantum energies, which include heat, light, and sound. So it's about energy. So that's why I got really interested in Paloma, which is an amazing organization, because they're so holistic in everything that they do, because it's about energy. And the 5th chakra is about energy as well. 5th chakra has to do with communication, receptivity, obviously the throat, the area of the larynx when we talk and we communicate. Also in terms of receptiveness, so receptiveness to other people's words, receptiveness to our own higher self. Things like art and music come through there. And so when there's a problem with this chakra, we lose the energy, the ability to feel that we're being taken care of, ability to express ourselves, not being heard, and all the things that are associated with this particular area. And same thing happens with the thyroid gland. When we feel our thyroid gland is no longer, when we experience our thyroid gland as being hypothyroid, we also feel dull. We don't feel energy. We don't feel like we can communicate. We just kind of lose our energy in our mind and body. So the nice part about this model, this paradigm, is that there's correlations between the physical, the energetic, and the mental and the spiritual. So in the physical level, we can adjust this. We can do things like eat well, and that affects the chakra as well as the thyroid glands we talked about before. We can also do yoga postures, and we can get into that a little bit later. Maybe what kind of postures can you do to stimulate your thyroid gland, especially when it's underactive? And this is part of the energy, the physical body. And then in terms of the energy part of this, the chakra and the thyroid gland area, we can do things like breathing exercises, what we call in yogic traditions pranayama. If we have time, I can explain a few of those as well. And in the mental and spiritual level, we learn how to focus our energy on the fifth chakra, and we learn how to use even mantras. We can use prayer. We can use other ways to communicate with our inner self, and we can actually activate the chakra. So that's kind of an overview of the chakras. And Alex, you can take that little pictures away, and turn it back to you, Mary.
Thank you. Fascinating. So really, I mean, what you're saying is that there are so many different components because we're talking about a physical issue, but it's also an energetic issue. There are physical and energetic ways to improve it. So we can do things like better nutrition, we rest, and reduction of stress and all these types of things, but also breath work, meditation, movement, all of these factors. So just as it always is with thyroid, it's never one smoking gun or one size fits all. We need to bring in the best of everything that we can to help support the mind, the body, the spirit on all levels.
And from one of the questions I'll throw out here that I ask my patients and my clients is that sort of to start them to wrap their brain around them, because many patients who come with me because I do have that medical degree and I do sit in the integrative area. And so they're curious. They know there's something there in the integrative functional world, but they're just a little curious. So one of the questions I ask is like, okay, when you think about your day or you think about your life, can you think about what gives you energy and then what takes away energy? Now, it could be food, it could be the sleep, it could be the supplement, it could be the caffeine, but it's the people around you. It's your purpose and sense of life. It is that whole being of community and connection. It's the environment. It's the sunshine. It's the toxins. As you said, it is all interconnected. But if I can frame it around energy, like what gives it, what takes it away, they can start to get curious about their own lives and start to answer that question for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So a very practical way of describing some of the same processes that Dr. Chernin was describing as well, which again is why I'm loving having both of you here to give us these perspectives and different descriptions of the same exact thing. Terry, while we're with you, can you share with us, Dr. Chernin brought up the issue of some supplements and nutrition and things that might help feed the energy of our body or feed our thyroid chakra, our fifth chakra. Are there any particular herbs or supplements that you have found helpful as an integrative practitioner for your Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism patients, whether it's to help support their thyroid specifically or more energetically, for their overall thyroid and energy support?
Absolutely. So from that same frame, takes away, gives. So I'm going to look for things that are taking away that energy. So inflammation from the gut. So diet that is gluten-free, no dairy, good whole things, because that in itself has good energy in it. As you take in good whole foods, they themselves have good energy in it. So there's that. So you want to take away that kind of things. You want to take away the stresses. You want to take away the toxins. You want the environment and everything else to sit in there. And so what am I going to support it? I'm going to support the thyroid itself with the nutrients that it needs, make sure the vitamin D's out there, decreasing that inflammation. That's on that other side. And then just making sure that it's functioning well. But there's one other system that I will always address when I'm talking about thyroid, and that's the adrenals, because they are married so close to each other. I'm looking for energy support that's coming from the adrenals. So that's like ashwagandha, green tea. Sometimes it's even DHEA, believe it or not, to help support those systems. I want to make sure the detoxification processes are really supported with glutathione and maybe some other type of N-acetylcysteine. So I'm looking at, well, how do I build it up and how do I support it and how do I get rid of the things that are dragging it down?
Fascinating. Dr. Chernin, I'd love to get your thoughts too about that specific question of there have to be some supplements that you really feel like are your go-tos for your Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism patients. Can you share some of your favorites as well?
Yeah, I think Dr. Pena used some of the same ones that I use. I think all of us holistically oriented doctors use those very similar ones. I would add things like that. I'm very interested in mitochondrial biology. The mitochondria and sort of the energy driving little cells within the nucleus. So I would add things like resveratrol, consider that, alpha lipoic acid. You said glutathione is definitely one of those as well. And acetylcholine. You know, these are the things that some of the vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin C that are I think are very important for inflammation. And then of course I would really move towards foods. That's foods to me are even more important than supplements because it all starts with you are what you eat. I mean, that is the truth, and you are what you drink. And so the cleaner the diet, the more anti-inflammatories, the polyphenols, the berries, the tomatoes, the green leafy vegetables, the nuts, the seeds, the almonds and the walnuts. These are great food. Fish oil is good for people who are eat meat. Whole grains, really important. All the nutrients in whole grains. So I focus on nutrition first, and then I move to supplements. And again, I tend to focus on the mitochondria and look at the energy situation with how they're functioning.
Okay. What about D-ribose? Is that one that you've been using or interested in? Because I know some practitioners have found that really helpful for the mitochondrial energy as well.
To some extent, yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Chernin, how about those B complex vitamins? Are you finding that those for people really can make the biggest difference? I forgot to mention them, but I just checking in with the expert here. But yeah.
Oh, totally, yeah, totally. Yeah. B12, gosh, as we get older, we just don't absorb B12 as much, and people become, B12 deficient. B1.
In the right form of the bees, so we want the right chemical form of the bees. So that's also equal important that I'm finding. So
I agree.
Interesting. Okay, Dennis, I'm going to go back to you. What you had mentioned things like body movement therapies and various ways to incorporate physical movement in to help treat symptoms or obtain better balance when we have a chronic illness or a condition like Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism. So if you can share with us some of your thoughts about some of these therapies like yoga or Tai Chi or dance therapy, and if we're going to integrate these types of approaches, how do we figure out which one's going to work best for us, and when do we time it? Is it good to do in the morning, like they say to exercise in the morning, or do we do it at night as a relaxation? What are your thoughts on that, if you can give us some pointers?
Well, Mary, the three areas that you mentioned, dance, Tai Chi, and yoga, are the things that I love to do the most. I love to dance. I mean, if you had some music on, I'd be dancing right now. And it goes way back to when I was a little kid, and my mother made me do tap dancing. It stuck with me. But
Alex, cue the music.
and Tai Chi, I've been doing it for for many decades. I teach it, and I love it. Other martial arts too, but I love Tai Chi, the movement, the beautiful flow. mind, body, spirit, connecting breath and the movement of the body. I'm going to speak a little bit more about the yoga perspective because we were talking about chakras, and chakras are related to the yoga system. Mm-hmm. And we hear about Hatha yoga, and Ha means the sun, and moon, the moon. Tha means moon. So it's the integration of sun and the moon. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. It's the whole. Mm-hmm. The whole seven coming together. The male and female come together. The male is the sun, and the female is the moon, and they bring together as a whole. There's several aspects to Hatha yoga that people don't really know about, or maybe if they've studied, they know. But it's not just the asanas, the postures, but it's the mudras, the hand movements, the kriyas, which are the cleansing techniques, and bandhas, which are the locks. The locks are very interesting. There's a way to lock the chin during meditation and doing yoga postures, where you really activate the throat chakra, and you use other locks to move energy in the body. And you learn this in meditation. I was taught that when I lived in this yoga ashram. And all these yoga, a lot of yoga postures just stimulate the glands, and thyroid gland is one of those glands. Increases yoga, increase the postures, increase flexibility and relaxation, body awareness, increases the gracefulness, how we move, relax. We focus on that, and then as you go along in the yoga practice, you learn about strength and power that also comes from the practices. So there are certain postures that I recommend. I just teach people in my practice. I love doing it. I show them. I get on the floor and I show them the bridge. I sometimes show them the shoulder stand, and the fish, and the plow, the cobra, the lion. Which it's just depends on the person. Some people just want to get the thyroid medicine or the hypertensive medicine, but there's a lot of people probably listening today would like to just learn these things. So I teach them these things, and sometimes I'll even stand up and do some of the Tai Chi postures. I love my practice because it's just fun. I deal with a lot of sick people, but also there's a lot of humor and a lot of fun in the whole thing. Also, yoga, the Hatha yoga practice balances the left side and the right side. A lot of times we're off. Also balances the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. Sympathetics involved with stimulation. Parasympathetic as a response is involved with relaxation. It balances the two. A lot of times we're out of balance with too much parasympathetic. We're kind of low energy. Sometimes we're too much sympathetic, too much energy. There's someplace in the middle. And Hatha yoga, the real purpose of Hatha yoga in the traditional yoga tradition is that it prepares us for meditation, to be able to sit for longer periods of meditation. Interesting. That's not to say that yoga doesn't have its benefit. I just mentioned all the benefits that it has, but it helps you sit for longer periods, and so you get deeper into the meditation. And in terms of the timing of the yoga and or Tai Chi, you don't want to do it after you eat. You want your body to metabolize and absorb. So I recommend 2 hours. If you can do yoga practice, do it 2 hours after you've eaten, or of course before, it's fine. In terms of nighttime and daytime, it doesn't matter. Certainly in the morning, you're invigorated. Hopefully you wake up and you're refreshed. It's a good time to do it. Your body, you get the kinks out of your body. At nighttime is good too, because, it helps you relax, especially when you do some shavasana where the corpse pose, where you relax at the end. Wear loose clothes. It's really important not to have tight clothes on. Let your body be free. And make sure you go to the bathroom before you do postures. That can inhibit your flow and energy. And then for women in particular, when they're going through their menstrual cycle, we teach in the yoga tradition to not do inverted postures, headstands or shoulder stands when you're menstruating. Everything else is fine, but probably check yourself out. Make sure you're comfortable with where you're at. Maybe decrease it a little bit, especially if you have abdominal cramps. But you're certainly fine to do it. I would say the same thing for Tai Chi and any other physical movement that you might want to do for mind, body, spirit integration.
Okay. Well, let me ask a question because we assume everyone understands yoga, what Hatha yoga is, but there are a lot of people out there who don't really know that much about yoga, or what they do know is Madonna or Gwyneth Paltrow with their body twisted into a pretzel and their ankles around their neck, and people think I can't do that, or that's too intense for me, or they've gone to a hot yoga class and realized they could not keep up. And I've always tried to encourage thyroid patients that I talk to understand that even basic yoga breath work can have benefits for them, and that the gentlest forms of yoga have benefits. So I'm wondering if you can address how someone who's fairly new to yoga might be able to get into it without thinking that they have to have the, you know, incredible flexibility of a contortionist and be in fantastic physical condition and all this type of thing. Because I mean, you can really do yoga at any size and in any kind of condition, can you not?
Yeah, it's not a competition. In fact, yoga teaches you not to be competitive. It teaches you to understand yourself, accept yourself, move from where you are. Some people are stiff and it takes a long time to loosen up. Some people are incredibly flexible, and that's not necessarily a good thing to be totally too flexible. I also want to say it's a good question, Mary, because Hatha yoga is part of a larger system.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the Raja yoga system. Raja means kingly or royal. It's an eightfold path. The hatha and the asanas are the third rung on this ladder. And so the first one is the yamas, and the second is the niyamas. They're basically what to do, how to study, what to avoid, you know, be truthful. Kind of like the 10 Commandments of yoga. It'd be interesting to go through that. I teach classes on this. Third one is the asanas. The fourth one is pranayama, the breathing exercises, which are incredibly important for the thyroid gland. The fifth was are called sense withdrawal. The sixth is concentration. The seventh is meditation, and the eighth is absorption or samadhi. So when I teach this, I always teach that the yoga practices, the postures, are a very small part of the yogic tradition. And so so some people have a great flexible body, some people don't. It doesn't matter. It matters that you learn how to look inside, how to relax what you need to relax, how to notice the inhibitions that are there. If you have a thyroid problem, how to sort of work with that. It's really about where you start from, and not to be competitive, and to try to be, consistent and regular. The more regular you are, the better you're going to get at it. It's just like anything you practice, right?
Wonderful. Thank you very much for explaining that, because I think people need to understand that, like you said, it's not a competition. It is purely about my own path and moving forward and becoming more balanced, more at peace with the world, more in touch with myself, my body, getting things back into balance, and respect for myself and the environment in which I'm in. So speaking of environment, Dr. Pena, can you talk to us a little bit about the importance of the environment? And here we're not just talking about the air, the water, the environment from the pure, sense of the news sense of the word, but really your environment, nature, the people around you, your family, your work environment, your workmates, your friends, your workspace, your home, all of those different factors that surround you every day. And can you talk a little bit about the impact that has on mind, body, and spiritual health? And I'm going to disappear for a moment because I realized my cord isn't plugged in, and I got to plug
Your
in.
battery's gone.
My battery is dying, so I'm going to plug in. So I'm going to let you chat while I plug in. So I haven't disappeared. I'll be right back. But go ahead and tell us a little bit more about that, if you would, Terry.
Oh, sure. So when I think of environment, I think almost anything outside the body. We have our physical body here, and then we have the outside body, and then we have the interface, which is kind of our personality and our mind and how we think. And all three of them are connected, and all three of them influence each other. So if we're going to look sort of just on the outside of the body, yes, all of that is important. From toxin exposures, so the carpets, the chemicals, the cleaners, the lotions, the shampoos, all of that, your cookware, glass versus plastic, all of that will have a big impact. Again, that's that toxin on the thyroid that was more likely to make it not function very well. And then you have kind of like, well, what's outside the house, which is nature. Now, we as humans are bound to nature. We are hardwired to be in nature. So there's actually, this audience probably knows it, forest walking. It became a little bit more well-known not too long ago, but it's the time outside that has an impact on our well-being. depression, anxiety, connection to self, awareness, calmness, all of that, we're hardwired to get into nature. So I make it a point every day to go outside. Now, I may only get 10 minutes, but my goal is to get at least an hour or something, because I need that sunshine, I need that green, I need that fresh air. Even in Minnesota, it might be a little chilly in the next couple of weeks. I still need that. So that's that connection. And we need to honor that connection. If we're stuck in a house or stuck in a conference room or at work, if you happen to be back at work and you don't get outside, it's going to be a stressor on your body, it's on your soul and on your mind. So being outside, I always talk to my patients and clients about this. It's so important. So it's honoring us as humans and what makes us work really well, and nature is part of that. It just is part of that. So then, what's our interface with the environment is kind of like how we think, how do we respond, what's our personality type. So I kind of bring that in. So who is around you? What do you have that supports you, that makes you feel good, that has good thoughts, that maybe challenges your assumptions, teaches you, mentor you? What about your world that makes you a better person and doesn't stress you out? Again, go back to my original question: what takes away energy? What gives you energy? If you're hanging around people that leave you frustrated, angry, or shut down, you don't feel safe around them, they irritate you, you're like, I just am not in the greatest mood, then those people may not be really a great energy to be around. Find the people who support you, who welcome you the way you are, who do things similar to you, who find your tribe where you can flourish. So that's kind of, I think about that, I talk about that, and it makes a difference. In the corporate world, in medicine, it's not a very well-being focused, especially if you happen to be one of the providers in there. So I totally understand how the work environment and home environment and the people who hang around can greatly affect your life. I mean, I flirted with burnout I don't know how many times. And I think if I was still working in the corporate world, I probably would weigh another 100 pounds than I would right now, just because I'm managing my stress with bad habits.
Interesting, really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I wanted to just check in with Dennis on this question, because one of the things that people have often told me is recommended, or their practitioners have recommended to them, and it's probably a good week to bring it up, or maybe it isn't, but a lot of people they recommend to take a news fast or a technology fast as a way to get back in touch. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the idea of every once in a while we need a news fast or we need a technology fast for our mental and physical well-being.
Well, that's a really relevant question, since the elections were just yesterday,
Right?
which we all have our own interest in who wins and who doesn't win, and it can get overwhelming. But I actually want to take this in a little different direction,
Okay.
But it's related to what you said. So I'm also the medical director of 3 health departments, and there are smaller rural counties outside of Ann Arbor. And I've been doing this for many years because I have a master's in public health, as you mentioned. And as you can imagine, COVID was on our minds. I was on the phone 24/7, basically dealing with the media, dealing with the governor of Michigan, dealing with my health officers, and the commissioners and everybody was in an uproar, and there was dissension here and there. So I think people have been burned out by COVID. It's a very stressful time. I suspect that our thyroids have been really affected by COVID, just because of the kind of trauma and the energy sapping that both dealing with the realities of it and all the horribleness of it, and also dealing with how do we mitigate against it, the masking and the problems. So the problems that went along with the dissension. So I had to be on watching TV all the time and listen to Dr. Fauci and doing all sorts of things. But I felt now I need to take a break, because it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to know what's going on in the world. We need to know what's going on in Ukraine. We need to know what's going on in our politics. We need to know what's going on, in the inner cities. All those things are important. but it has to be balanced with positive things. I like watching and listening to NPR because NPR for me, has a lot of positiveness. It's just not all negative. And some of the news medias are pretty negative, whether it's CNN or MSNBC. They have a certain gestalt and a certain way of trying to get their media out and getting their people to watch them. And I think we have to sort of figure out how to keep it fairly neutral as much as we can, and at the same time be aware. So taking a break is not a bad idea. I'm taking a break. I'm not watching anything tonight.
Good. That sounds good. Thank you. And I'd like to go back to you, Dennis. Any other Eastern or integrative medicine approaches that you recommend specifically for people with hypothyroidism that you'd like to mention? I mean, obviously we can't cover them all because there's so many different ways that we can support the thyroid in natural or holistic ways, but any others that you feel really deserve a mention? Yeah,
I think Dr. Pena and I, and actually you did too, mentioned some of the more important methodologies and modalities to treat hypothyroidism and what to look for. Some of the other ones that I could mention is Ayurveda, which is the ancient Indian. I mentioned that earlier before. But there's a way of understanding human beings with respect to what we call the doshas. There's a Vata person, which is more airy, and then there's the Pitta person, which is more fiery, and there's a Kapha person that's more heavy. And there are ways to not only understand the personality, physical body, but also herbs and plants and other techniques that can be used to balance those things out. So it's a very interesting science, and I've studied that. I'm not an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm a homeopathic practitioner. Homeopathy is another world, and it's just amazing. Every day I'm so grateful that I learned homeopathy because it's a world in and of itself, and that's a great way to treat thyroid problems. I've treated hundreds and hundreds of people with homeopathy with thyroid. Not only, but I use different medications as well with some people. Acupuncture is another one. Now, I don't do acupuncture. I understand the theory of it, but those people, and I have a lot of people I refer to. We've had acupuncturists in my building. I have a holistic building that has a lot of different interesting people, and so I refer to them. So I understand it to some extent, but it's another world. But that also can be useful for thyroid problems. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the breathing techniques, so important for thyroid problems. There's something called Ujjayi, it's called the sobbing breath. There's something called Brahmari, which is the breathe breath, where you inhale and exhale with a hum. There's something called Kapalabhati, which is called shining skull, where you breathe more quickly on exhalation and you inhale passively. And there's Bhastrika, which is the bellows breath, where you breathe real fast and you focus on here. And there are meditation techniques where you can use certain mantras to activate the thyroid gland. That's a special technique that I was blessed to be able to learn about when I studied and then have taught that over the years. So there's, as well as we talked about, Dr. Pena talked about the anti-inflammatory things and the foods and all that. That's extremely important as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before we go on to some questions, and we do have some questions coming in from our viewers, which is exciting. We have one last question, and it's actually something that the three of us, or four of us actually, with Alex as well, talked about a little bit about before this session, because it's a question that I often hear from thyroid patients. In 25 years of being a patient advocate, I've had so many people ask me this question, which is, I feel like my thyroid problem is my fault. My practitioner told me that I don't speak up enough, or my chakra is not balanced, or I don't eat the right way, or I'm too stressed out, or whatever. And so they take on a lot of self-blame and shame about their thyroid issue. And they think that is a holistic perspective. And it's absolutely, in my opinion, the opposite from that. So Terry, first, I'd like to go to you. How can a patient really move into integrating holistic and Eastern and integrative types of approaches into their thyroid care, but not do it with a feeling of self-blame or shame about it?
Well, if you're bringing in shame, you're going to have a hard time healing. And yet, You need a provider that opens the space, that allows the acknowledgement that, you know what, I'm feeling guilty about this. You know, I should have done this and I should have done that. And someone told me that it was just normal. And, you know, I complained and no one listened to me. So one of the things that is one of my soapboxes is that, especially women, they're not seen, they're not heard, and they're not validated when they come in to me and they said, I feel tired, fatigued, and I think it's my hormones, and the labs, oh, it's all normal in the conventional world, then shoves them outside the door. And I'm like, no, come sit down. Let's talk about this. The shame is not just with the thyroid, but it also, the shame is encompassing the entire person in that person's life. So is it that you didn't eat the right food? We're not talking blame here. We're not talking judgment. I tell my patients all the time, this is a no judgment zone. And yet we also need to know what's the truth of going on. What are the choices and what are not? You have, when you are aware of what's going on, that awareness brings power. That power is to choose. And as I was telling to my patient just earlier today, I'm like, hey, you know, we're human. It's the holidays. You know what? I guarantee you, I won't eat really great all at 1 or 2, maybe 3 meals. But you know what? I'm not going to trigger that inner critic where it blames me for hours and days later that says I'm a less person because I made this choice. We have to allow ourselves to be human, and we will not be perfect. But if we could be a little bit better every single day, if we can make a little bit better choice, if we can have more awareness about here's where I want to go, here's my goal over here, here's a path to get there, and every day I'm going to make a little bit of that path, knowing that it's going to be rough, knowing that you're going to fall down. It's just part of the way it is. And we just sit together, my patients and I, and like, okay, all right, what did we learn? How can I set yourself up for failure? Can you think about how, if this was a failure, which it wasn't, how do you set yourself up for success? What was it about there? Get curious, get light, just, you know, play with it. Don't judge. So there is a lot of judgment. There is a lot of shame. Not only that we bring it because we've been told that, but we need to bring it to say, I'm feeling this way. But if I don't know someone's feeling this way, I can't start untangling that story that they're embedded in, so that person then can release that story and then drop that negative energy, because that negative energy entangled in the mind and the belief and the story about them will inhibit their healing. You got me on a soapbox there. One of my soapbox.
That's good. We like your soapbox. Thank you. Now, Dennis, I know you have some thoughts about this too. How do you counsel or advise a patient that is trying to take a holistic approach, but is interpreting it in a way that they're feeling blame or shame about their own behavior or their lack of good decisions or their inability to follow certain diets and exercise plans and whatever types of things? How do you get them out of that sort of cycle and back into a more productive place from a holistic standpoint?
Well, my first immediate response is sense of humor. Actually, I try to laugh when the patient starts, you know, getting into, you know, self-blame and, you know, all this kind of stuff. I try to bring some humor in. I have some good friends and who are physicians, and laughter is a really important one. So we can laugh at ourselves. And I laugh at myself. I tease myself. Sometimes I tease patients, and, you know, very light, you know. So sense of humor is really important to break the cycle of, oh my God, everything's so serious. Because life is kind of funny when you think about it. We take ourselves really seriously, and we're a little speck of dust in a short period of time in the relation to the cosmos. So it's a bit of a cosmic joke. So I try to lighten things up a little bit, and then I try to reframe. Like Dr. Pena was saying, I really like what she just said, because it's really important to not blame and to take, but at the same time take self-responsibility. It's a really different concept. You can take self-responsibility without blaming yourself. Saying, okay, I really screwed up when I was doing this. I was drinking too much, or I was smoking too much, or I got myself 30 pounds overweight. Okay, well, I didn't do a good job, and that's okay. I'm going to fix it. Take responsibility for the things you did. Take responsibility for the things you want to change. And if you can reframe it from I blame myself to what can I do to make things better, and what did I do in the past that, you know, made me who I am. I think my experience with psychiatry was really helpful. I decided not to be a psychiatrist, but I did plenty of psychotherapy early on. I became a family doctor because it was more holistic for me. but that actually helped me to sort of understand people's pain and shame and all the things that they carry. And those are the two things that I work on a lot, is not only the techniques that we just discussed, but also, how can we laugh at ourselves a little bit and see that we're all fallible, every one of us journey on this planet, and let's just enjoy it, as best we can. It's a short time, and here we are. How can we improve our relationships? How can we take responsibility for how we eat and how we think and how we exercise and all these things?
Wonderful. Thank you.
For me, the humor, it very much is important. And I kind of frame it as, well, where's the joy? We got to have that joy every day. We just got to, for me, it's some of the outdoors and the people, it's the laughter for you. But yeah, we got to have that joy every day. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, we have, there's about 3 different variations on the same question. And I think these are probably for you, Dennis, because people want to know, apart from the yoga practice specifically, what can we do to stimulate or activate our thyroid chakra?
Okay, well, I don't call it the thyroid chakra. The thyroid gland exists in this energy field of the 5th chakra.
The 5th chakra, right?
Which includes the larynx and the voice box, the throat, the nasal pharynx in the back of the throat. All these things, it includes that. So it's a larger whole. But as we mentioned before, I think that breathing exercises are absolutely wonderful on the thyroid area on a very physical level. The breathing is the intersection between the mind and the body.
Yes.
Okay. It is part of the energy field, the energy body that we call. Homeopathy actually works on energy. Acupuncture works on the energy level. So it's the bioelectrical fields of our body we're kind of working with. So breathing exercises are really, really important. And as I said before, yoga postures are really important to sort of stimulate and activate that. And if you have somebody, a yoga teacher who has studied a little bit of yoga therapy, or if there's a doctor in town or a life coach that knows about yoga, they can teach you what kind of yoga postures are really good for activation of the thyroid gland. I like breathing exercise, and I do meditation with just select people who are interested in it. And there are certain mantras and certain things that are considered to activate. Actually, when things are hyperactive, like in hypothyroidism, which we don't treat at the moment, but there are things to quiet it down too. And there are foods that activate our heating and cooling.
Great.
That come in.
Thank you. Another question came up about hot yoga. And somebody said, it's like, if it's like being in a sauna and maybe helps us with detox, is something like hot yoga beneficial for the thyroid? And so, Dr. Chernin, what are your thoughts about hot yoga and sort of sauna detox approach to thyroid care?
I think saunas are amazingly important. I mean, to be able to sweat and being able to have to be able to purify and cleanse is very important. If you have access to a sauna, we put one in my house, and I love it, especially in the wintertime. I'm not quite as north as Minnesota, but Michigan's darn close.
Darn close.
Anyway, so saunas. In terms of hot yoga in general, I think I see some benefit in it. I think for certain people who are stiff, it loosens you up. It softens the muscles a little bit. I think there are certain, I actually teach a class in meditation and Raja Yoga, which I mentioned before, every year, and 3 or 4 times a year in Ann Arbor to a person, a friend of mine who has a teacher's training program. So I think it can be very helpful. They have 26 postures and some breathing exercises. It's a little not as traditional as the yoga practices that I learned, but I think it has some benefit for certain people. Certain people it's not for. Certain people like the flow yoga, vinyasa yoga. Certain people like the very traditional yoga, where there's space between the postures and it's not hot. So I think it depends on the individual. I think people find their way to hot yoga if it makes sense to them. They feel good doing it.
Thank you. And then our last question that's come in from our viewers, and I'll let either one of you address this one. Somebody is trying to find out whether or not they should take glutathione daily and if that would be of benefit to them with their thyroid function. So do either one of you want to tackle the question of glutathione?
Well, for me, I don't blankly say everybody needs glutathione because it is the major detoxification enzyme or protein in the body. And we all make our own, but there are certain circumstances, whether it's medically or genetically, where somebody might need a little bit more, or their condition is they have a lot of gut issues, they have other things that are going on, and we're going to do something that adds the detoxification levels. And so I don't blindly just tell everybody to get glutathione because you can't have an adverse effect of it. There's actually something in the gut that if you have too much of sulfur type of bacteria, the glutathione can make everything worse and you feel bad on it. So it's just one of those ones. I'm discerning and very personalized about why I want to add it and then what condition and what intention behind it and for how long. So it's not a blanket. Everybody go get some, liposomal glutathione. You're going to feel better in 5 days. My experience is not quite that simple. Dr. Chernin, what are your thoughts?
I'm right with you. She said it exactly how I would say it. I'd add one more thing to glutathione is that whenever we take these kind of supplements and enzymes, we have to understand whether it's really being absorbed properly. A lot of times the stomach acid will break a lot of these supplements down. So you mentioned liposomal, which is helpful because it helps to not allow the acids to destroy. But I think one of the things that I work on is I have to be very thoughtful about what supplements I recommend, not only because there can be toxicity, like you said, but also because some of it's just not absorbing. You're just spending a lot of money for nothing. So, turmeric is an example. If you don't take black pepper with it, it's not going to absorb as well. That's just one small example.
Right.
So,
and if somebody already has a dysbiosis, a gut issue, if they're in, if I get hints that they're not tolerating foods or they're constipated, their diet, if there's gut things going on, you are not absorbing what you're eating. You're not. So that gut thyroid connection is huge. But if we're doing intention for healing, I want to make sure the gut is working really well. So what they're taking is absorbed, and acid is definitely a part of it.
Thank you. Well, before we wrap up, I do want to ask a question because this is a unique opportunity for us because we have two Paloma doctors on with us today. And, if I can't imagine if you're somebody watching and you're in the states that these two amazing doctors are located, I can't imagine not wanting to immediately call up Paloma and say, I want to talk to them. I want an appointment because both of you are just absolutely fascinating. And I wish I lived in now, Dr. Pena, you are in Minnesota. And Dr. Chernin, you are in Michigan.
Correct.
Okay. So our Michigan and Minnesota patients, here's two incredibly good examples of some of the amazing connections that you can make with doctors from Paloma. But I wanted to ask you both a question because, you both you're not new right out of med school. You've been around the block a few times. Do you find that the virtual medicine is really working for you, being able to connect with people and talk to them online? I mean, I know in-person medicine has its own benefits, but what has been the surprise benefit to you of the virtual approach of meeting with patients?
I'll take it on first, Terry, if you don't mind. I love it. It's been great. I hate to say that I gained something from COVID because so many people have suffered, and including my social life. And I have 3 kids and 9 grandkids, so I didn't see them nearly as much as I wanted to. So yeah. It was a problem. But I think that we just need to continue to be really aware of our of what we're doing in our lives and how things will unfold holistically and how we live in a world that is complicated. And so just basically that. I just think we just need to continue to love everybody as much as we can and serve people. And I think telemedicine has allowed me to serve people in a different way. And I think they like it. They can stay in their pajamas, call them on the phone and they don't have to schlep over to my office and sit in, in the waiting room. They were always worried about COVID and getting infected, and everybody wears a mask in my office, but still. So, it's been a boon for my practice, and it's allowed me to sort of slow down a little bit too, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, between patients, I can go lift weights or do some Tai Chi. And
Right.
I would do that in my office too sometimes, but it's a little easier at home. So it's been great for me personally, and I think for most of my patients, and I hear from most people it's been good. I'd be interested in hearing what Dr. Pena has to say about it.
Yeah, Terry.
Well, for me, it took a little bit of shift of the mind because I had been trained so long in the one-on-one, and I actually loved the one-on-ones. But what surprised me was how well patients loved it and how much I loved it because of, I'm here and it's immediate, and I still get that connection. And we're a technological society. This is here, and having the constraints of an old fashioned or the conventional just doesn't fit anywhere. If you need to be seen in person, you need to be seen in person. This is not a substitute. This is a nice kind of foundational avenue to get what you need in the care, and to have that conversation with somebody in your home or wherever you feel the best. And so it takes away a lot of barriers. And so, yeah, it's been really great. I'm actually going to be starting to increase my online practice here in Minnesota. And so, yeah, it's like, oh, this is really cool. I think I want to do more of this. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
I want to add one thing,
Yes.
because Paloma is the epitome of online medicine, and
Yes.
it is a fabulous. I just love Paloma. I'm still kind of new at it. I'm still maybe 6 months or so into it, but Marina and G and Mandy and all the people have created such an amazing platform for
Yes.
not only treating people where we can talk to them online, but also to be the information that has been available,
Mm-hmm.
like this particular speaker series is just a good example of it, right? So I'm also licensed in California, which a lot of my patients have been coming from, have been coming to see me, have been from California. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a great thing too. They helped me get licensed in California. So kudos to Paloma.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Paloma's lucky to have you both. And Alex, I think we probably should wrap it up here, but I want to say absolute thank you very, very much to Dr. Dennis Chernin and to Dr. Terry Pena for sharing your wisdom. I feel like we could have gone for another couple of hours. And Dr. Chernin, we want to get you back on so you can do some yoga shoulder stands and some pranayama techniques for us.
The Tai Chi.
Yeah, we want to learn all of those different things. We can get so we can get our metabolism and thyroid stoked and get the blood flowing and the whole bit. So
Breath work, Dr.
Yes,
Chernin,
we'll get you back.
I'd be glad to teach the breathing techniques. That'd be fun.
We will get you back for that for sure. So again, thank you so very much. And I'm going to turn it back to Alex.
Thanks, guys. Well, yeah, that was a great discussion. For everybody viewing this, thank you so much for attending. Just a quick reminder that we will be sending a replay out. So if we have your email and you RSVP'd, you will receive an email beginning of next week for a replay of this event. And then you can always rewatch it later on down the line. And then, the basics, don't forget to follow us on our social media at Paloma Health. And if you have any other additional questions or anything, we're more than happy to answer. And, Dr. Dennis and Terry here, thank you so much for joining. And I'm just really excited for, everybody to get to work with you and, ask all the questions and everything like that. So thanks again, guys. If you have any other questions or need help as far as like resources and everything, you can always head to our website at palomahealth.com. We have a bunch of different resources there, and as well as workouts and everything on the mobile app. So you can check that out. But yeah, thank you so much for attending. We're going to go ahead and end this broadcast. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Mary.